Much obliged. Now, when we left off, Mr. Yearwood, you told us that Mr. Mingo had attempted to make a declaration, and this was around 1:20 p.m. I want to take you to 2:30 p.m. of that very day. Did you see Mr. Mingo again?
Yes, he was on the stairs leading upstairs to one of the higher floors, and he had a document in his hand, and I think he was attempting to make a declaration again.
Okay. How far away from you were you at the time?
It's about one floor height, so I would say about 12, maybe 15 feet.
And were you able to hear what he was saying?
I heard what he started out saying, but not what he completed. He started out saying that he was going to make the declaration.
No, exactly what were his words?
Pardon?
What were the words he used? Do you recall?
I don't recall the exact words, but I know it was that he was attempting to make that he was saying that he was going to make the declaration for Region 4.
And at about 4 o'clock that evening, did you receive any information or instruction from any GCOM member of staff? Well, perhaps I should ask you this. At about 4 o'clock that evening, were you still at Ashman's building?
Yes, we were still at Ashman's building.
Oh.
Before we go to 4, we were at 2:30 when you heard Mr. Mingo say he was going to make a declaration.
Yes, sir.
Well, did he make the declaration?
As far as I know, I don't know where he made the declaration, but when he says that he was going to, myself and a few, well, not a few, but all of the party agents that were there started to object to it. A lot of persons started to shout no, 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 no. So the volume was as such that I couldn't hear what he was saying after that. What I did see was that after a few moments, he took out a pen and he signed the document that he was holding in his hand. Whatever that document was, I have no idea.
Around 4 o'clock.
Yes, but before we get back to 4 o'clock, between 1:20 p.m. and 2:30 p.m., had any verification of statements of polls continued?
There was no verification done since Mr. Levan had finished the night before.
So you were in the building, you were still in Ashman's building at 4 p.m. and did a GCOM member of staff speak to you and other persons there?
Yes, the party agents were in the tabulation room, and a member of the GCOM staff, I don't know his name, came in and said that we had to vacate the building because they were going to the next stage of whatever the process was. He never explained what that next stage was.
Did anybody ask what that next stage was?
Yes, but we received no answer.
Did you ask?
I didn't ask, no.
Okay. Can you now recall who asked?
No, I can't.
And did you ever discover the name of that member of staff?
No. The member of the GCOM staff, no. I never found out his name.
Well, what was your response to the request to vacate the building?
Disappointment, anger, particularly anger.
But more than that, did you vacate the building?
No, I didn't.
You did.
Because I was angry because by now the formation of the thoughts that something wrong was definitely happening.
Okay. So you remained in the building, and later that afternoon, did you observe anything?
Yes, a while after I observed medical personnel rush into the building.
Okay. And did they go to any particular floor?
They went to the very top floor.
Would that be the third floor?
Yes, it was.
Were you able to see from where you were what was happening upstairs?
Yes, I was. I had, on seeing the medical personnel come in, I had moved up on the steps leading up to the stairs, up further up, and I was in a position to see what was going on at the top there, yes.
Yes. And very briefly, can you tell us what you saw?
The medical personnel rushed right up to the top floor. They went to a door and they tried to get into the door, but they were prevented by the police. They were prevented from entering the room by the police who were guarding the entrance to that door.
Do you know
So-
what was in that room or who was in that room?
I have no idea who was in that room.
How did you know they were medical personnel?
They were dressed in emergency medical outfits. And they were also carrying a stretcher.
And you say you saw police officers guarding that door. How did you know they were police officers?
They were uniformed, in uniform.
Well, upon being prevented from accessing the door or going through the door, what did the medical personnel do?
Well, after arguing and trying to get to convince the police that they were there at the request.
Pause. Were you able to hear what was being said from where you were?
No, I wasn't able to hear,
Okay.
but
Well,
I could
let's-
see from the gesticulations.
Right. So,
that
so they were not able to get through the door.
no, the police refused them entry.
Did they then leave?
Shortly after, yes, they left.
Do you know a man called Narain? His surname is Narain.
Yes, I know Mr. Narain.
Did you see him at the building later that day?
Shortly after the medical personnel, yes.
Had you known him before?
Yes, I had known him from previously.
When you saw Mr. Narain, where were you?
I was on the second floor of the building at that time.
And when you saw Mr. Narain, where was he?
He had gone up to the very same door that the medical personnel had been refused entry to, and he was also refused entry into that.
And are you able to say who refused him entry?
The police personnel on duty at the door.
How do you know that?
Through the gesticulations again.
Could you hear what was being said between Mr. Narain and the police officers by that door?
No, I couldn't hear what they said.
Did you remain on the second floor, or did you go up or down afterwards?
I never went past the second floor. I remained on that for a while.
At about 6:30 p.m., did you leave Ashman's building?
Yes, I left Ashman's at around 6:30. As other ANOG party agents came in to relieve me from my position in there.
Could I ask you, what led you to the conclusion that Mr. Narain was trying to get into this particular room? He put his hand on the lock?
After Mr. Narain was denied entry,
No,
he
you
saw
heard
me.
You heard somebody denying him entry?
No, I saw the gesticulations of the police suggesting to him that he couldn't go in.
What did they held
They,
there,
they just prevented him from going in.
pushing him back?
Yes, kind of, and blocking the door entry. He subsequently saw me and came to me because we are
No,
friends.
no, let's go.
Okay.
Let's go slowly.
Okay.
Mr. Narayan approached the door.
Yes.
A policeman stood in front of him, in front of the door.
Yes, sir.
Well, that is clearer.
Okay. Okay.
It's much clearer than your deductions from gesticulation. You agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Good.
I agree.
Thank you.
You went on to say that subsequently Mr. Narayan spoke to you?
Yes. Mr. Narayan and I have been
But
friends before that.
he-
So,
He spoke to you.
okay. So he came over to me and he spoke to me and he told me that they had refused him entry into the room. And that she had called, the chairman of GCOM had called him requesting assistance because she was not feeling well. And that when he spoke to the police on duty at the door, they refused him entry to go into the room.
Do you know whether Mr. Narayan was a relative of the chairman?
I don't know whether they're related. He just said that they were good friends and that she had called for his assistance previously on other occasions.
Thank you.
By chance, do you know what Mr. Narayan does for a living?
Yes, I do.
What does he do?
At that time, he was an inspector of the Guyana Police Force.
Now, shall we go back to when you were leaving the compound upon being relieved? Did you observe anything as you were leaving the compound?
Yes, as I was outside of the Ashman's building, leaving the premises, I passed a 30-seater bus disembarking police officers in riot squad with riot shields, and they were entering the building.
Was this a marked police bus?
Yes, it was.
And were the police officers in uniform?
Yes, they were.
Did you know any of the officers?
No, I don't know who they were.
Now let me take you to the 12th of March 2020. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
And on this day, you knew that an order had been made by the Chief Justice for the verification process in Region 4 to restart or to continue, correct?
Correct.
So, having that information in hand, did you go anywhere?
Yes, I returned to the Ashman's building on the morning around 9 a.m.
And when you got there, were there any other party agents there?
Yes, a few other party agents were there as well. They were from the PPP, from LJP. Some local observers were there as well too.
And what does LJP stand for?
Liberty and Justice Party.
Can you tell us whether there were any observers there on that morning, the 12th
Yes,
of October?
there were observers there that morning. Local and international observers.
And you had told us that before you had been in a tabulation room. Is this the room to which you returned?
No. On the 4th and the 5th, we were in a room that was to the north of Ashman's building.
Mm-hmm.
We were now instructed to enter a room at the southern end of Ashman's building.
Was this on the same floor?
Yes, it was on the ground floor.
And who gave those instructions to you?
The instructions came from the police. As we were walking, going there, they directed us towards that entrance.
When you got to that room, did you see Mr. Clement Mingo?
Yes.
And did you have any interaction with Mr. Mingo?
Um,
Did he do anything?
hold a moment here. On the morning of the 12th, I think we started at the normal tabulation room. And it was the afternoon we went to the back end of the room.
Sure, no problem.
Yeah.
On the morning, did you see Mr. Mingo?
Yeah. And we went in through the normal entrance,
Mm-hmm.
and he allowed the observers in, the party agents in, had us all sit down before we got into the tabulation room, and he checked off the local and the foreign observers, and then he turned to the party agents and said that none of us were accredited to be there, but using his discretion as the returning officer, he would allow us to witness the tabulation of the count at that point.
And did he say anything else to you?
He also said that he would not tolerate any noise, any objections, anything. If we did, he would ask us to leave.
And at 4 minutes past 11, did Mr. Mingo say anything? Now, if you can't recall, remember your statement is in evidence. Will you like to refresh
Yes,
your
thank
memory?
you. That particular point.
What paragraph are you looking at?
32.
I referred him to 32 and 33.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So Mr. Mingo,
Did Mr. Mingo at 11:04 say anything in relation to this statements of polls?
he told us that this was not going to be a verification process, but that he had tabulated all the statements of poll and put it on a spreadsheet, which we would go through from that point on.
Was any GCOM commissioner present at that point?
There was Mr. Sace Gunraj and Mr. Robson Ben as well.
Did either of them say anything?
Mr. Gunraj told Mr. Mingo that was contrary to the Chief Justice's order, which she had given the day before, in which she had stated that verification of statement of poll by statement of poll should be done.
And what did Mr. Mingo say upon being told that by the commissioner?
Well, he got very flustered, and he didn't know how to respond to that.
No,
So,
well, did he say anything at all?
I don't think so.
Okay. Did he remain in that room?
No, he got very flustered and then he left.
Did he return at all, or did he give a reason for leaving the room?
He says that he was going to get the statements of polls so that we could use those to do the verification process.
And did he subsequently return to that room?
He did.
When he returned, did he have the statements of polls?
No, he didn't.
Did he say anything in relation to the statements of polls or about the statements of polls which he had said he was going for?
No, he didn't say anything about them.
Did he add anything? Or did he say anything to the party agents there, including yourself?
I think he said that we would reconvene at about 1
Mm-hmm.
in the afternoon of the 12th.
Okay. Did he say anything at that point about a spreadsheet?
That he was used his spreadsheet to, which he had tabulated already. He said he had tabulated the statements of poll already and had put them on a spreadsheet, which he would then use to inform us what the count actually was.
So when he returned without the statements of polls and was making it clear that he was using the spreadsheet, what did you do or say, if anything?
Well, I objected to the fact that we were not being allowed to verify the statements of poll.
And apart from yourself, did anyone else object?
I would go so far as to say all of the party agents who were present there, with the exception of the APNU party agents.
What did they do? Everybody objected
Yes,
except for APNU?
yes.
Now, you made reference earlier to the chairman of GCOM. Did you see the chairman of GCOM that afternoon?
Yes, I did.
And where were you when you saw her?
By this time, we had moved to the southern entrance, the southern end of the building, and she came in and said that she was waiting on the written judgment from the Chief Justice's order of the previous day, and that when we get that, we would be able to continue.
Well, did you, as one of the party agents for your party, say anything to her?
Well, we accepted that, and that yes, it was a good decision, that let's wait until the written decision was with us so that she could explain to us, she being a retired judge, would be able to explain to us exactly what the Chief Justice's order, what it meant.
And what was the position, or what did the other party agents say?
They all agreed to it.
Are you familiar with the name Kit Nascimento?
Yes, ma'am.
And when the chairman of GCOM had come to speak to you all in that room, was Mr. Nascimento there?
Yes, he was.
And did Mr. Nascimento make any inquiry?
Yes, he rather suggested that we adjourn until the afternoon when the Chief Justice's written order could be presented to us.
Okay. Was Mr. Nascimento an observer?
Yes, he was an observer for the Private Sector Commission, yeah.
Sure. Now, just around 4 p.m. or just before 4 p.m. that day, did you see Mr. Mingo?
Yes, we had returned back into the new tabulation room, and Mr. Mingo then proceeded to continue doing what he had tried to do in the morning, which was using the spreadsheet to do a tabulation rather than a verification.
Okay. Did he give you any word on the written judgment which you all were waiting for?
No, we never received that.
And having not received the written judgment, did you all remain there?
Well, Mr. Mingo then suggested that we
Would you like to refresh your memory?
yes.
It's been a long day, sir.
No, it's a lot of things happened that day too.
Yes. Did-
No, I'm fine at this point. I'm fine at this point.
We are looking at 36 and 37.
Yeah. So,
No, don't read from the
No, no.
statement. It's in evidence. So, having told you that there was no word on the written judgment, right? What did you all do? Did you remain there? Did you leave Ashman's building?
we didn't want the verification process to continue. So,
One
Mr.
moment, Mr. Harewood, you have to listen to what you.
Uh-huh.
Counsel is asking you, what did you all do? Did you remain there?
No, we left shortly after.
You left shortly after.
Sure. And I want to take you to another date and ask you if you recall it, or do you recall the 13th of March 2020?
Yes, the 13th, yeah.
Did you return to Ashman's building on that day?
Yes, we did.
And where in Ashman's building did you go to?
We went to the southern entrance where the new tabulation room had been set up.
And at about what? Sorry, I beg your pardon.
No, it's okay. So, your last account of what transpired at the Ashman's building was on the 5th. 5th of March.
That was when Mr. Levan and the flash drive, yes.
The events with Mingo was what day?
On the 12th.
Oh, the 12th, sorry, I beg your pardon, yes. And so you're now about to tell us about what happened on the 13th.
Yes, sir.
Correct, thank you.
Yes.
Yeah?
So you got to Ashman's building at about 9 a.m.
Yes.
And can you tell us what you observed about this new room where you all had been placed?
It was a completely different room we were in, a much larger room. There was much more distance between the head table and the counting agents. There was the projector and the screen was still there, and the layout was it was just a bigger and to me it seemed a much more comfortable room.
Good.
Because there was a lot more space available in it.
Good. So, apart from yourself, did you see any other party agents there that morning?
Yes, all the parties had agents there for that morning.
And what about observers? Did you see
The
any
local and the foreign observers were there.
Did you see Mr. Mingo there that morning?
Yes, Mr. Mingo came in to do the verification.
And what happened when Mr. Mingo came in?
Well,
Was there an objection from anyone?
Yes, myself and the party agents wanted to restart the count from 4001, but Mr. Mingo and the APNU party agent wanted to start at 4041.
Now, why did you want to start at 4001?
Based on what my thought process was, if they were trying to do something with the flash drive, let's make sure that the numbers we had counted with the figures we had verified with the two ladies, that they were still the same as being recorded on the flash drive and on whatever it is. We just wanted to make sure that there were no changes in those figures.
Sure. Now, did Mr. Mingo or the APNU AFC representative give any indication as to why they wanted to start from 4041, ballot box 4041?
No, they just wanted to start from there.
And did the verification process restart?
It did.
And can you tell us what happened then?
As the verification process started at the 4041, very quickly I realized that the figures they were calling out were not the same figures that we had recorded on the SOPs. So I started to object to that.
Okay.
Sorry, just for my clarification, you wanted them to start at 4001.
Yes, sir.
That was the beginning.
To restart the entire process of the East Bank.
Right. 4041 would have been something that you had already counted?
Yes, sir. There are 4 or 5 SOPs that Mr. Levan had done the night, which had numerous mistakes in it. We didn't trust the process anymore, so we wanted to start over.
Yeah, I understand that. 4041 though would have been something that you had already verified?
We would have verified up to 4040.
4040.
So the next one to start would have been 4041,
Which had not yet been verified.
which had not yet been verified.
But I just want to be clear because you said very soon after that you noticed the numbers weren't
Yes, sir.
computing.
Yes, sir.
They weren't matching what you had.
That's right.
So in other words, the trend seemed to be continuing where the SOPs were not matching up with what you had. The
Yes,
numbers
sir.
being read out. Okay. Thank you.
So, when you realized that the differences in the numbers on your statement of polls and the numbers being called by Mr. Mingo, what did you do?
I started to object to it.
And were you the only person objecting?
No, I wasn't. Most of the other party agents objected to it as well.
At the time, was there any APNU AFC representative in the room?
Yes, there was.
And what was the reaction of those representatives?
There was reaction from one particular representative in that she became very vocal. She became verbally abusive.
Okay, so instead of describing it, can you just tell us what was said or done? So this representative, can you recall her name?
She threatened to.
What was her name?
Oh, okay. Her name was Carl Smith Joseph.
Okay. And she threatened someone?
Yes.
Who did she threaten?
2 people. She threatened Pauline Chase, who was the Guyana Bar Association's observer, and she threatened Mr. Kit Nascimento, the private sector observer. She also threatened the heads of the what we call the ABCE, American, British, Canadian, and European heads of mission in Guyana. She also threatened them with physical harm.
Okay. So what did she threaten to do to Miss Chase, who was the accredited observer from the Guyana Bar Association?
She threatened to stamp her in the face.
And what did she threaten to do to Mr. Kit Nascimento, who was the observer from the private sector?
She threatened to spit in his face.
After these threats were made, did the ABCE heads of missions do anything?
Shortly after they got up and they left the building. Well, they left the room.
And what had Miss Smith Joseph said to these ABCE heads of missions?
She told them to get, I I don't want to repeat the exact words, but basically she told him to get out of Guyana.
Okay.
I can put that into colorful language for you if you want, but
Well,
We want to hear what she said.
well, depends on how colorful we want to get to the commissioner with all due respect.
You can offer us the first letter, I think we are sufficiently mature.
oh, if you want to hear the first letter, you can say, well, get the F out of Guyana.
Thank you.
She was in a very nasty mood.
Okay. Now, were there police officers around when all of this was taking place?
Yes, there were. Quite a large number of them.
And did any police officer intervene to restrain or control Miss Carol Smith Joseph?
No effort was made at all.
Did they speak to party agents?
Every time a party agent tried to object, the police tried to intervene to tell us to be quiet.
And when all of this was taking place, was there any GCOM member of staff in the room?
Yes, there were.
And did any GCOM staff member say or do anything?
Not that I can recall, no.
Now, later that day, did you see a court martial at Ashman's building?
Yes, I saw a gentleman, I presume because of his uniform to be a court martial, enter the building. He went to Mr. Mingo and presented him with a document.
And after Mr. Mingo was handed this document, did he remain in the room?
He read the document and then he left the room.
And did any other GCOM employee remain in the room?
Yes, they remained, but the verification, I think the verification still continued for a while.
Can you remember the name of any GCOM employee who remained in the room?
Denise Bob Cummings was still there.
Sure. And when this occurred, did you stay in Ashman's? Did you stay at Ashman's?
Yes, I stayed.
And did other party representatives stay?
Yes, they stayed.
And did, at some point later that day, did you leave the building?
Yes, well, I left the building after a while.
And when you went outside of the building, did you make any observations as to who was outside?
Yes, when I left the building, I had to walk 1 block to get outside of the police barricades. And at the police barricades, I encountered members of the press who then started to ask me questions as to what was happening within the building.
And did you speak to them?
Yes, I spoke to the press.
And while you were speaking to members of the press, well, apart from the police officers, was there anyone else around?
Yes, at the corners away from the barricade, there were numerous APNU AFC supporters, and they were identifiable because they wore the APNU t-shirts. When they realized that I was speaking to the press, they all came and surrounded us to probably hear what was going on.
Okay, well, you can't tell us why they probably did what they did, but they came up and they surrounded you.
Yeah.
Did they do anything else?
After listening to what I was telling the press, they started to pelt me with plastic bottles.
And did the police protect you? Or
Not that
provide you with protection?
Not that I can recall. The police did nothing to intervene as far as I remember.
Sure. Now, did you re-enter Ashman's building later that day?
Yes.
And is it correct to say that when you entered, numbers from ballot box 4718 were being called.
Yes.
Now, at this point, was the person calling from a statement of polls or a spreadsheet?
I think it was from the spreadsheet. No. I think by then they had gone back to the statements of poll.
Okay. And after that, did you see Mr. Mingo come into the room? Now,
During,
it's not a memory test, evidence.
know,
It's not
but-
a memory test. So if you want to read it, and it's a lot.
yeah,
So if you want to have a look at your statement.
if you don't mind.
Certainly. Paragraphs 44 to 45.
Thank you. Yeah, shortly. Okay.
Okay, so I had just asked you whether when you returned and you found that the clerk was now calling from the statements of polls, I asked you whether you had seen Mr. Mingo come back into the room.
Yeah, shortly after he came back into the room and he suspended the process, and he said that we would restart at 4 o'clock the next day at the GCOM's headquarters in High Street at 4 the next afternoon.
All right, so that means that you would have restarted at another building.
Yes.
So all this is still on the 13th.
Pardon?
These events are still on events of the 13th of March. So the restart on the afternoon of the 14th.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Would that be correct? Yes.
Yes, so
Did he say where this other location would be?
Yes, that it would be the GCOM headquarters on High Street.
Thank you.
now the next day was the 14th of March 2020, correct? Or was it Friday the 13th?
This would be the Friday the 13th.
Okay.
So your next day would have been
The next day would be the 4th.
No.
No.
We were on the 12th. So when he stopped the tabulation, he was saying we would come back on the 13th.
13th. Okay.
Right, so earlier on when you said that you had returned to Ashman's building on the 13th of March 2020 and you all had moved to the back room and so on, all of that was the 12th of March, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So on Friday the 13th of March 2020, did you go to GCOM compound at High Street for 4 o'clock?
At High Street, yes. GCOM's headquarters at High Street, yes. 4 o'clock.
And when you arrived there, did you see any other party representatives?
Yes, a few of them walked in with me at the same time.
And can you remember in particular any of those
Not
who
really. no.
happened to be there at the time?
Not really, but I know party representatives were there.
Okay. And did you see any observers there?
Yes, local and international observers were there.
Did Mr. Mingo arrive?
Yes, Mr. Mingo arrived.
And did he speak to the persons gathered there?
He explained to us what the process would be, in that they would take a statement of poll, put it through a projector screen, which would then be projected onto what was supposed to be a screen, and once we all saw that, he would then show us what the statement of poll, show us the statement of poll. However, the
Okay,
screen.
just a second.
Okay.
Now, you are now at a different building. You are now at GCOM at High Street. Could you tell me or describe the surroundings you were in at that time?
Okay. The location was an open air garage, which was open on two sides, the western and the southern side. The eastern side was where the screen was, the supposed screen was to be. It turned out to be a white bed sheet. The projector was to my left, and the head table was now to the east of that room. So we were now east-west facing each other.
Okay.
The head table and the party representatives and the observers.
Well, you say the screen was a bed sheet. How was it affixed to something?
It was, I think it was just nailed or taped up to the wall.
Mr. Yearwood, you saw a piece of cloth. How would you differentiate between a piece of cloth and a bed sheet?
If I may, sir, the only piece of cloth I know that is that big would be a bed sheet.
So you call it a bed sheet because of its size.
Yes, sir.
It was large enough to cover a bed.
Yes, sir. A large bed.
I see.
A large bed.
Now, you said that when you got there, you had you noticed observers were all also there. Was one of those observers the European Union delegate?
Yes, he was there.
And that afternoon, when after Mr. Mingo explained his process and so on, did that delegate do anything?
Just before the process actually started, he got up, the European Union observer got up, went to the projector to more or less, I think it was more or less to see how the process would function from that end. But he was chased away by Mr. Mingo.
When you say he was chased away, did Mr. Mingo say anything to him?
He told him to get back to the seat, that he was not allowed there. He wasn't allowed near the projector.
And did the observer comply?
Yes, he did.
Now, before you told us that you had seen police officers at Ashman's building during the verification process over the course of several days. On this particular day, at this new venue, did you see any police officers?
Yes, there were a large number of police officers present there.
Were they in uniform?
They were in uniform.
And were they armed?
Heavily armed, yes.
Now, at about 12 minutes to 5 that evening, the process began. Is that so?
Yeah.
With ballot box 4791?
Yes.
So, was this the same process with a GCOM staff member calling a figure and that figure was now being projected onto the bedsheet screen?
Yes.
From where you were you able to see what was being projected on that screen?
Not very clearly, no.
And was there any difference in terms of how the numbers were being called out as opposed to how they were being called out previously?
There was no difference because the figures that we were hearing were not necessarily the figures that we had recorded.
Okay. Was the person calling out the numbers, calling them out more quickly or more slowly or at the same pace as before?
Much faster.
said they were not necessarily. I mean, what do you mean?
Can you read the context of the sentence, sir?
No. And counsel asked you whether the person who was calling out the numbers was calling them out so that audibly enough so you could have heard. Then you said you were not hearing them. They were not necessarily consistent with what you had.
Yes, sir.
Is that they were not consistent with what you had? Why you say necessarily consistent?
Well, Commissioner, perhaps I could assist?
Yes.
Yes. Now, you have heard the chairman bring your attention to something you said. They were not necessarily the same. Now, from what you told us afterwards, you were having difficulty seeing the screen, correct? So is this why you are saying that the numbers were not necessarily the same, because you couldn't see on the screen what the number was?
Apart from that, there were the numbers for the smaller political parties were correct, but the differences came with the numbers for the two big political parties. There were no changes to what ANOG and LJP and CG had won. The changes came from the two big political parties.
So what you're saying, when the numbers for the two big political parties came on the sheet, right, they were different from yours.
Yes, sir.
That's what you saw, right? So they were not necessarily different, but they were different.
Yeah.
So yes.
Now, when this started happening, did you remain there?
After a very short while, I realized that the process was going to be the same, what I considered a nonsensical process.
And did you say or do anything?
I packed up to leave, and I told Mr. Mingo in no uncertain terms that if Guyana erupted into violence, he would be the sole cause of it because of what he was doing here.
And did Mr. Mingo reply?
No, he didn't.
Did anyone there do or say anything when you made that statement?
At that point, no. But when I was leaving, as I got up, I had packed up, and as I was leaving to walk out, Miss Carol Joseph rushed at me from where she was sitting, and she was threatening me.
Now, when you say Miss Carol Joseph, I think you had referred to her earlier, but...
Yeah, she's the APNU. She was the APNU AFC counting agent representative at this point.
Sure. Yes, and how did that play out? How did that incident play out? She rushed at you?
Yeah, when she rushed at me, I remembered everything that she had done and threatened to do to other parties.
What did you do?
I defended myself and I pushed her away.
Okay. And after you pushed her away, what happened to you?
I was arrested. I was immediately surrounded by 5 or 6 heavily armed police and escorted out and taken to Brickdown police station.
Harewood, Mr. Harewood, why did you push her?
She was rushing into me.
Oh, she was coming towards you.
She was sitting maybe 3 or 4 rows back. I was walking down the exit. So she left where she was.
And was coming towards
rushing
you.
to me, not walking gently, rushing to me.
You, yes.
And she says that I'm going to get you.
Okay, it's important.
So I went into my defensive mode.
Stage. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But I'm gonna get you. She's running to you. Maybe she just wanted to give you a hug, knowing that you were leaving.
Maybe your approach should have been different for that.
I
then.
see. Okay.
But bearing in mind what she had done earlier, I didn't want a hug from her.
And at this, who is Mr. Timothy Jonas?
He was and still is the chairman of a new and united political party, which I was the representative of, and he is also a lawyer.
Okay, so you saw him at the station later that day.
I called him to meet me there, yes. I told him what transpired, and he came as my lawyer.
All right. And were you charged or released?
I was released after I showed the police in charge the video of what took place. I was released.
Okay. Now, I'm now rushing you on to another day. Do you recall 16th of March 2020?
Yes.
And were you told anything in relation to containers containing ballots on that day?
Yes. I was told that GCOM would be removing the containers containing the ballots, the ballot boxes, from their head office to the Arthur Chung Conference Center.
And what did you do? Did you go there?
I went to the Arthur Chung Center.
And apart from yourself, was any party representative there?
Yes, lots of party representatives and local observers were there.
Did you see any GCOM employee enter the ACC building, the Arthur Chung Convention Center building?
Yes, I saw the deputy CEO, Roxanne Myers. She went into the building.
Sure. And at about 6:10, did a vehicle arrive at that building?
Yes, a Ministry of Health vector control vehicle drove into the compound at that point in time.
And did you speak to the driver?
Yes, and I was informed that they had instructions to fumigate the building.
Did he say who the instructions had come from?
I think it was from someone in GCOM. I can't really remember.
Okay. And after this, did you see whether personnel from Ministry of Health Vector Control entered the Arthur Chung Convention Center building?
Yes, they entered, and I presume they started to fumigate.
Did you see Ms. Myers again?
Yes, I saw her when she came out of the building.
And did you speak to her?
Yes, I spoke to her and I asked her whether what we had been told was true, that the recount would start the next day, that the counting would restart the next day. And she said, as far as she knows, no, because the building was being fumigated.
Okay. Did she say anything about when the recount would start or the count?
No, but she did say that there had been no agreement reached between the CARICOM representatives and GCOM as to what was going to take place from here on in.
Now, you have told us that at the other places where GCOM had operated before, that there had been police officers. Did you observe whether there were police officers at the Arthur Chung Convention Center building?
Yes, there were.
And can you describe how they were dressed or what they were carrying?
Initially, there were only a few, normal, doing security, securing the premises and whatever. But shortly after, a large amount arrived in riot gear with weapons and riot squad with the shields, helmets and everything there. They formed a line and they said that we have to leave the compound. They proceeded to advance towards us very slowly, and step by step we were forced eventually out of the building, out of the compound.
Okay. Are you familiar with the name, are you familiar with a police officer called Mr. R. Stanley?
Yes, I am.
And did Mr. Stanley speak to you that evening?
He didn't speak to me directly, but he spoke to us as a crowd, and he said that he had instructions to clear the compound.
And when you say he spoke to us as a crowd, would that have included party representatives and observers?
Yes.
Did he say from whom he had got these instructions?
No, he didn't.
Now, after you all were made to retreat away from the building, did any police officer speak to you?
When we were outside of the premises of the Arthur Chung building, basically on the public road, Mr. Stanley came to us and we asked him.
You asked him?
I didn't ask him, but I heard.
Did you hear any?
I heard it being said that we disagreed with having the containers left without party representatives being there to ensure that nothing was done to them, to the containers.
Who said that?
One of the party agents.
Okay. So one of the party agents expressed that concern
Yes.
to Officer Stanley.
Yes.
And what was the outcome of that?
He then thought for a while, and then he told us that he will allow one party representative to be there to ensure that everything would be okay. But he didn't want a large crowd in there.
Okay. And did that take place?
After the first set of party agents went in, I left, yes.
Now, sir, you have given us several accounts of, how should I put it, of somewhat contentious developments which occurred during the period of time you've spoken about. Do you agree?
Yes, I do.
And did you make a recording of any of those episodes?
Yes, I did. Very early on my entrance into the Ashman's building on the 4th of March, I noticed one of the local observers with a notepad and a pen making notes of whatever. So I thought to myself, this is a great idea. So I started to make my own records as to what was transpiring and at what times things were happening. So I did that. As much as possible, I took photographs of what was on the screen when it became disputed. At the Ashman's building, there was a recording of that. At the Arthur Chung Center, I took photographs and videos of the police advancing towards us.
Now, did you make any audio recordings?
Yes, I have some audio recordings of the new tabulation room in the Ashman's building.
Okay. Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I am respectfully asking for leave for a recording to be played. So I'm going to ask you to listen carefully to what is going to be played.
Each statement therefore,
Mr. Mingo will have to stand for the program.
please not interrupt me. But sir, if you're saying things that don't comply with the act, please do not interrupt me, sir. If in your opinion, each statement therefore,
Mr. Mingo will have to stand for the program.
please not interrupt me. Each statement of faith. Therefore,
Mr. Mingo, have to stand for the program.
please not interrupt me. But sir, if you're saying things that don't comply with the act, let him finish. Do not interrupt me, sir. If in your opinion that it's not complied with the law, then you can take other recourses. I will stand my ground and I will read from each statement of faith. Therefore,
Mr. Mingo, have to stand for the program.
please not interrupt me. But sir, if you're saying things that don't comply with the act, let him finish. Do not interrupt me, sir. If in your opinion that it's not complied with the law, then you can take other recourses. I will stand my ground and I will read from broadsheet.
It's interesting, sir, that just now you were willing to bring it to the time, and then suddenly you spoke to the CEO and you're standing your ground. The thing is, sir, you were sitting in a court of lawyers where the Chief Justice is very clear. And right now,
Due to circumstances beyond my control, I can allow the laptop to be placed before the commissioners for it to be heard, but the general public will not hear it. Will the commissioners be able to hear it?
Just plug it in and turn on one of the microphones.
Sure. Well, if that is possible, as they say in Star Wars, make it so.
each statement to finish. Therefore,
Mr. Mingo will have to stand for the program.
please not interrupt me.
But sir, if you're saying things that
Please
don't
do not
comply with the act,
Please
let him finish.
do not interrupt me, sir. If in your opinion that it's not compliant with the law, then you can take other recourses. I will stand my ground and I will read from the broadsheet.
It's interesting, sir, that just now you were willing to bring the SOP, which couldn't find you, and then suddenly you spoke to the CEO and you're standing your ground. The thing is, sir, you were sitting in a court of lawyers where the Chief Justice is very people. And right now, you're going against the Chief Justice's order. Are you aware?
No, I am
Are
not.
you aware of the consequences of going against the court order?
I am not going against court order.
Mr. Mingo,
That these are my questions for Mr. Yearwood.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, our next witness, who is expected at 2:30, because we realized that this witness was likely to finish around that time, had all gone well, I have not been able to confirm if he's here yet, so I'm wondering if we take a short break. Dr. Josh Tanhai. would you prefer to swear or to affirm?
Doesn't matter. So I will swear.
You'll swear on
Yes.
which holy book?
The Bible.
So Josh, can I use swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I swear to say the truth, nothing but the truth.
Now, you are coming across a bit softly, so I want you to try to speak into the microphone. That's because you're tall, or if need be, we could perhaps ask that a chair be put. But let's see how we manage with you standing, okay?
No problem. Good afternoon.
Would you state your name?
I am Josh Kanai.
Perhaps I could just ask for some feedback from the audio people as to whether his voice is being clearly recorded. Yes. Okay, but if you could still throw your voice a
No
little
problem.
bit more, that would be wonderful. What is your address?
I am at Lot 7, Turkine, Greater Georgetown.
That's much better. And are you a medical doctor?
Yes, by profession.
Are you registered with the Medical Board of Guyana?
Yes, I am registered with the Medical Council of Guyana.
Are you familiar with a party called the New Movement Party, the NMP?
Yes, I am familiar with that party.
And in what capacity?
Well, I was the founder and the general secretary of that political party at the time.
And when did you found the party?
This party was founded in 2019.
Now, I want to take you to the March 2020 elections. Did NMP contest the general elections for that date?
Yes, we contested the general elections.
And did you contest in all 10 regions?
No, we had contested in 6 of those 10 regions.
Are you familiar with the term list of candidates?
Yes.
So, for your party, who was the leader of the list for candidates?
I was the deputy leader of that list, and my colleague Dr. Ford was the leader of that list.
Okay. Could you spell his name?
Dr. Gerald Ford. F-O-R-D-E.
Thank you. Now, in order for a party to be able to contest in a general election, what does that party have to first submit?
Well, we must submit our list of candidates on the nominations day.
And to whom do you submit that list?
We submit that list to the Chief Elections Officer of GCOM,
GCOM meaning?
being the Guyana Election Commission.
And did your party submit such a list?
Yes, we did.
And was your list accepted?
Yes, our list was accepted.
Now, Dr. Kanhai, you gave a statement
Yes, I did.
and you signed it
Yes, ma'am. All 4 or
and,
how much
and
pages?
initialed it.
Yes,
If you see it again, will you be able to identify it?
should be able to.
I'm asking that this document be shown to the witness. Have a look at that document and will you show the commissioners where you see your signature on that document?
Yes, sir. Right here.
Is your signature at the back as well?
Yes, and so far all of the pages, as I recall.
I'm asking that this be admitted as JK1, and I have 3 copies for the commissioners. At which physical location is the list supposed to be submitted?
Well, at this election, the list was being submitted at the Humana Yana.
Humana Yana.
Humana Yana.
On election day, what did you do?
Well, I am entitled to vote, so I went to the ballot box, I placed my vote, and I was also a representative for my party. I was one of the representatives which would have been moving throughout, but I would have been stationed at the Turkine polling station where I would have been voting.
Okay. Dr. Kanhai, I forgot to tell you one other thing, which is to say, because you are being recorded, we want to make sure that we get a clear recording. So you have to speak a little more slowly and try to keep the volume up.
No problem.
Okay? So apart from voting and going to Turkine, did you do anything else on election day?
Well, as far as my memory recall, we were just busy with the election and nothing else.
Were you there at the polling station when the polls were closed?
Yes, it was there up to the afternoon.
And did you receive anything as the agent for your party from the presiding officer?
Yes, we had statement of poll given to us a copy, and one was also placed outside of that polling station.
By whom?
By the GCOM officer.
I'm going to take you to the 4th of March 2020. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
And during the course of that morning, where were you?
I was at my work at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation.
And did you receive certain information?
Yes, I would have received some information from colleagues saying that Mr. Mingo, who was the returning officer, Region 4, had basically was picked up by an ambulance which belonged to the public hospital and taken to where I was.
Sorry, I didn't get that clear.
Right.
Could you repeat that, please?
So I
Please,
received a call from a colleague who told me that Mr. Mingo was picked up by an ambulance and being taken to the Georgetown Public Hospital.
And that is where you were working at the time?
Yes.
And where you were on duty at the time?
Yes.
Later that day, did you go to Ashman's building?
Yes, I would have visited the building later that day.
And when you went there, did you see Mr. Mingo?
Well, he was with some colleagues. He was talking to GCOM officials.
You're still a bit soft, huh? Yes. Could
Yes.
you repeat what you just said?
Yes, I would have seen him speaking with some GCOM officials.
And which part of Ashman's building was he in?
This was to the inside of the building.
In any particular room?
No, this was in the general open hall.
Now, when you say you went to Ashman's building, can you remember the address to which you went?
Well, I do not know the specific address for the Ashman's building, but it's in the vicinity of Stabrook Market.
Sure. And when you went to the building, did you see other party agents?
Yes, other party agents were there.
And did you see any observers?
Yes, observers were there as well.
Can you remember now, Dr. Kanhai, any of the party agents who you saw?
Yes, so there were agents from the Liberty and Justice Party. I recall Mr. Schumann being there, along with his party agent, Mr. Devon. I can't recall his last name. There was party agents from the People's Progressive Party. They were Miss Sonia Parag along with Miss Singh. I can't recall her first name. There was also
Dr. Kanhai, I think
You need to lift your voice.
the commissioners, I think what is happening, commissioners, when he gets too close to the microphone, he's getting a little feedback. So I'm wondering if we could try the option of a chair.
I was thinking that.
Yes.
Let him sit down.
Alright, this works better.
Perhaps I can inquire.
Yes.
Okay. Now, please don't fall backwards.
I'll try not to.
Okay. Tilt the microphone towards you and speak into it. There we are. So you were telling us about seeing party agents at the Ashman's building, and you were telling us who were the party agents you saw.
Yes.
Could you just go over that, because I'm not sure we got it recorded.
Right. So when I went over to the Ashman's building, the party agents that I saw, I recall Mr. Schumann from the Liberty and Justice Party, along with a Mr. Devon. I cannot recall his last name at this point. I also saw from the People's Progressive Party, the Mr. Sonias Parag was there, and Miss Singh was there, along with a Mr. Ses Narayan Singh. Other party agents were there from the People's Republican Party, and if I recall, someone from the URP as well was there.
Okay. Do you recall seeing any observers there at the time?
Yes, observers were present.
And did you recognize any of them?
Well, I recognized, I don't know them by name, but from their badges, I recognized AmCham was there. I recognized the Commonwealth was there as well. And another local observer was there.
Sure. Now, you say that when you went to Ashman's building, you saw Mr. Mingo at the building. How did he appear to you?
Well, he seemed to be looking fine.
Okay. And was he speaking to anyone at that time?
Yes, he was in conversations with persons who appeared to be working with Ghana Election Commission.
And did you observe any, did you observe whether the CEO was there at the time?
I recall that my colleagues had told me that he had vacated the building.
Okay, I don't want you to, I want you to try to avoid telling us what you heard from other people.
No problem.
All right? So at that time you didn't see the CEO?
No.
When you got to Ashman's building, are you able to recall whether the verification process was going on at that time?
No, it was not going on at that time.
And when you realized that nothing was happening or it was not going on, did you make inquiries as to what had happened?
Yes.
Who did you make those inquiries of?
Well, from my colleagues as well as other party supporters.
And can you tell us, well, one name in particular of a person you spoke to?
Mr. Schumann was there.
Mr.
Yes.
Schumann. You spoke to Mr. Schumann and you got certain information.
Yes.
And what information did you get from Mr. Schumann?
Well, he had told me that the clerks were complaining that they were tired and they didn't. They were taking frequent breaks and they wanted rest time. So that was one of the rest periods.
While you were at Ashman's building, at about 6:30 that evening, did anything occur?
Yes. Well, that evening itself, there was same stalling of the process. We had started back the tabulation process, and we had ventured into calling out the numbers and going through that process. At that time, they asked for interruption again, for breaks,
Okay,
and
so
for...
you're going way too quickly.
Oh.
Way too quickly. So let's walk it back a bit. So I asked you at about 6:30 p.m. whether you were in Ashman's building.
Mhm.
Were you?
Yes.
Were you in the tabulation room?
Yes.
Was anything taking place in the tabulation room?
Yes, we were going through the tabulation process whereby the clerk was calling from a laptop, calling numbers from a laptop, and we were verifying those numbers with our numbers.
And when you say, well, try to talk about yourself. So you were verifying, or your party was verifying the numbers, and what document were you using to verify the numbers?
We were using the SOPs that we would have had, the statement of polls.
And did this process continue?
No, well, for that afternoon it had started and then it had stopped due to the same complaints that I was told about.
Okay. Can you remember whether it stopped around 9 p.m.?
Yes, around 9 p.m. that was when.
And why did it then stop?
Well, the person at the computer at that time was basically saying that he was pointing to workers at the back.
He's pointing to who?
To two of the workers at the back of that same room. They were having their heads bent over and apparently resting. And he was telling us that they're resting and they can't continue for the night, or let us rest for a few hours and then we'll start back.
And what was your party's response to that?
Well, we had, myself, I was feeling very disgusted because that was probably the third time that we had stopped for the afternoon to take a break. So we started to get into verbal exchanges, asking them if they can continue, if they can exchange and interchange, and along those lines.
And did other party agents express any concerns in your presence?
Yes, party agents had similar concerns as mine.
And did persons from APNU and AFC object?
I didn't recall them objecting or even saying anything at that point.
Now, when you all objected or expressed your concerns, what was the response of the GCOM employee to whom you had spoken?
Well, at that point, he had gotten frustrated as well, and he was insisting that we stop. So he had started to arrange his desk and started to pack, and to basically pack up and go to the other office where they're resting.
So this particular employee left the tabulation room?
Yes, he eventually left the tabulation room.
And after he left, did you remain in that room?
Yes, we were sitting in that room talking amongst ourselves.
Are you familiar with the name Sonia Parag?
Yes.
And who is Miss Parag?
Ms. Parag was one of the tabulation agents for the PPPC.
And PPPC stands for what?
The People's Progressive Party Civic.
And did Miss Parag say anything to you?
Yes, I recall vividly that she stood up and she alerted us that the flash drive... She stood up and she alerted us that the flash drive that was in the laptop during that process when we were doing it was missing.
So she alerted you that the flash drive from the laptop during the verification process in which you had been engaged was not there?
Yes.
And what was your response?
Immediately we were astonished and we hurried through the door of that tabulation room in search of Mr. Liven.
At that point, were there police officers around?
No, no police officers.
Now, you said you went in search of Mr. Liven. Were you accompanied by anyone?
Yes, the entire room basically came out. There were party agents and there were a few observers at that point.
Okay. Now, you went in search of Mr. Liven. Did you know his first name?
At that point, no.
Do you know it now?
Yes.
What is it?
I believe it's Enrique Liven.
And had you known him before that day?
No.
So you went in search of him. There were other people with you. Did you eventually find him?
Yes, we found Mr. Liven.
Can you tell us in what circumstances you did so?
Well, we entered a room to the eastern end of the Ashman's building on the same ground floor. And in that room, we opened the knob. And it was a large room, probably the size of these 4 columns. We saw Mr. Liven. Well, I saw, because I pushed the door, saw Mr. Liven to the desk, the corner of the room had a desk, and to the other corner had a printer. Saw him at the printer with some documents being printed.
Okay. Was he the only person in that room at the time?
No, I recall 2 other GCOM staff.
Did anyone from, well, I think I may have asked you this already, but just in case, did anyone from APNU and AFC accompany you on that search?
I don't recall them being around at that point.
When you saw him in the corner of that room, did you speak to Mr. Liven?
Yes, I asked him, what are you doing there?
And you had been told by Miss Parag something about a flash drive. Did you
Yes.
ask Mr. Liven anything about the flash drive?
Yes, well, after he had us sat, I saw the black flash drive on the desk and into the laptop. So I asked him, what is that flash drive doing there? And then again asked him, what are you printing?
So when you entered that, sorry.
I'm sorry, Doctor, I didn't hear that very clearly. You saw the flash drive on a desk?
In the laptop.
You saw it in the lab?
Yes, in the laptop.
And it was from that laptop that Mr. Liven was printing some documents?
I would like to say, believe so.
Yes, thank you.
So we got to the point where you saw him in the corner, and I beg your pardon, you saw him in the corner and you asked him what he was doing. You asked him about the flash drive because you'd seen it on the table. Did you ask him anything else?
Basically, what is he continuously asking him, what are you doing? And what are you doing with these documents here?
Okay. And what documents were those?
Those were the documents that were in the printer. So when I got in, it was actively printing sheets. And by the time we had spoken with him, it had completed.
What did he do, if anything, with those documents that he had been printing?
So those documents were left in the printer. And as I recall, they were left there until the police arrived.
Now, when you asked Mr. Liven about all of these things, what he was doing, what were those papers, asked him about the flash drive, did he say anything in reply?
On a few instances, he had said, no, this is nothing. And he said that multiple times. And a few other instances, he would just stare blankly.
Did any of the other GCOM workers say anything?
No, they were silent.
Now, you said this laptop, there was a laptop on the desk with a flash drive.
Yes.
In that other room. correct?
Yes.
Did Mr. Livan ever go towards that desk where the laptop was?
Yes, he was sitting at that desk.
And did you see the police at some point?
Yes, we had summoned the police.
When you say we, who do you mean?
Well, one of the party representatives had summoned the police. I can't recall exactly who, but I was told that the police was summoned, and we kept the door open and we stood at that door just to make sure that nothing else was moving.
And while you were by the door, were you in a position to see Mr. Livan?
Yes.
And what, if anything, was he doing?
Well, he was just sitting at the desk, and at one point, after some others had questioned him, he had closed that laptop and laid on it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I would say he would have taken a rest. He bowed himself down on the laptop.
He put his head down on
Put
the
his head
laptop?
down, yeah.
At some point, the police arrived?
Yes.
And how did you know they were police officers?
They identified themselves.
Were they in uniform?
The one that I spoke with, he was not in uniform.
And do you recall the names of any of those officers?
At this point in time, I can't. But they were identified as the commanding officers for Brickdam.
The commanding officer for Brickdam.
Yes.
Did the police enter that room?
Yes, they did.
And when the police got, well, after the police got there, did you at any time see GCOM's CEO?
Yes, shortly after the police had arrived, the CEO showed up.
Did you see or hear the police do anything?
Yes, they were interrogating Mr. Livan.
Were you able to, well, you were inside the room or still outside?
At this point, when the police came for their investigation, I had stepped a bit back, but I was still in the capacity to hear a few of their conversations.
All right. And was Mr. Livan asked by the police anything about the flash drive and the laptop?
Yes, he was asked similar questions which we asked. What is the flash drive? Where did it come from? Which laptop is this? Where did this laptop come from? And so on.
And when the CEO arrived, what occurred?
Well, when he arrived, he had taken into possession the flash drive, and I saw them had exchanges with Mr. Livan, the CEO, and the police, but I was not in a capacity to listen to that conversation in entirety.
And what became of the flash drive then?
Well, at that point, the chief elections officer was holding on to that flash drive.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
The chief elections officer was holding that flash drive from there on.
He had possession of it.
He had possession of it.
Did you and other agents ask the CEO to see what was on the flash drive?
Yes. So while in the outsides of the tabulation room, we had pleaded with the chief elections officer to see the contents of that flash drive. After a good back and forth with him, we eventually got him into the tabulation room to show us that content.
Okay. And you had told us you had seen some sheets of paper in the printer. Did you ask to see what had been printed?
Yes, at that time the police had taken those documents and had it with him. I did not get to have a conversation with the police after that.
Sure. So you returned to the tabulation room, and did the other party agents also return to the room?
Yes, everyone did.
Did the CEO go to the tabulation room?
Yes, he did.
And what about Mr. Livan?
Mr. Livan also accompanied him.
Can you recall whether any other GCOM employees returned to the tabulation room?
No.
When Mr. Livan returned to the tabulation room, what did he do?
Well, he, after going back and forth again with the chief elections officer, asking him to see the contents of that flash drive, he eventually said, okay, we'll look at it, and he asked Mr. Livan to place the flash drive in the laptop that was in the room.
Now, I need you to be a little clearer about this. You said after going back and forth with the chief elections officer, what do you mean by that?
Right. Well, we were asking him.
When you say we,
well,
explain who you mean.
So myself and the party agents were asking him to see the contents of that flash drive, which he's saying that it's not the same flash drive, and
the
that
chief elections officer is saying that?
Yes, he's saying that it's not the same flash drive that was in the room. It's a different flash drive.
Did you hear Mr. Livan say any such thing to the chief elections officer?
No.
So, what was your response when the chief elections officer is saying this is not the flash drive?
I basically asked him, how could you be so sure that it's not the flash drive that was in the room? You weren't present at that time.
And what was his response to that?
He kept saying that, no man, this is not the same flash drive. And then other party agents were asking him similar questions, and eventually he gave in and said, let's go look at the flash drive.
Okay. Now, how long did that process take before he agreed to have a look at the contents of the flash drive?
I put it anywhere between 15 minutes to half an hour. We were back and forth.
So, having returned to the tabulation room with Mr. Livan, the CEO, party agents, and others, could you tell us what then occurred?
Right. So Mr. Livan had inserted the flash drive into the laptop that was in the tabulation room, and it was projected onto a projected screen, showing us his spreadsheet.
And what happened then?
Right. So we started to see numbers which were not corresponding, and the entire crowd had an uproar, asking what are those numbers? Where did those numbers come from?
And when you say they were not corresponding, with what were they not corresponding?
They were not corresponding to the statement of polls that I was in possession of, and other party agents were in possession of.
So you say there was an uproar, and well, what did you do? What did you say, and to who?
Right. So at one point, I recall asking Mr. Lowenfield if we had to beg him to find the correct documents, because they were saying Mr. Lowenfield and Mr. Livan was saying that they couldn't find the documents which we were previously working on.
They said they couldn't find the documents you all had been previously working on?
Yes.
Did they eventually find the document that you all had been previously working on?
Yes, after searching the laptop, they eventually found the document we were working on.
And how long did it take for that process to happen? I beg your pardon, Commissioner.
No. Go ahead.
Yes, how long did it take that process?
That process probably took us over into another morning it went on for about an hour.
To find that the
No,
documents you all had been working on before?
To find the documents, it was taking about 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you say when those numbers were put up, people complained that they were not matching the statements of polls that they had.
The initial set of numbers that were put up, yes.
Sure. Now, what was the reaction of the APNU and AFC representatives, party representatives in the room when all of this was going on?
I didn't recognize any of them there at that point.
When people complained, when you and others complained about the differences in the numbers being shown, was the CEO there?
Yes, he was present.
And did anyone ask him about the discrepancy in the numbers?
Yes, persons did ask him.
Can you now recall who asked him?
Persons, the Liberty and Justice Party leader, Mr. Schuman, was asking him, and the presidential candidate for the People's Progressive Party was also questioning him.
And what did Mr. Lowenfield say, if anything?
Well, he kept trying to tell us that the spreadsheets are there, it's just a matter of finding it, and he was basically most of the time just looking at us and smiling.
Did the verification process continue that night?
No, it had ended.
How did it come to end?
Well, after we had found the spreadsheets that we were working on, we basically, the then presidential candidate of the People's Progressive Party suggested that we have the documents printed, and each party agent should have a copy of that document so that we can resume from that exact document the next day.
And did everyone agree to that?
We agreed, and Mr. Lowenfield ended up having
Mr.
it print.
Lowenfield also agree?
Yes, he agreed to it.
Did you remain at Ashman's?
That entire night I stayed at Ashman's and on to the morning, up until 6 a.m. the morning.
And why did you stay there?
Given all that had happened that night, I felt like a lot was amiss and very suspicious. And also the statement of polls and the other documents, official documents from Region 4, were in the tabulation room to the eastern end of that room, and they were just they were in boxes on the ground. It didn't seem very well secured, so each party, most of the parties asked an agent to stay.
Now, the following day, did you have a conversation with two members of your party?
Yes, in the afternoon.
And they told you something?
Yes.
And did you go back to Ashman's building?
Yes, I went over there.
At about what time was this?
This was about 3:30 in the afternoon.
When you got there, did you speak to persons from your party?
Yes, I spoke with members of my party.
And who were these persons?
Excuse me. There was Dr. Gerald Ford and Dr. Asha Kisoon.
And what did they say to you?
They had relayed to me that Mr. Mingo, the returning officer for Region 4, had attempted to make a declaration, and it seemed like it had gone through.
Now, from the time verification had stopped the night before to the time you were having this conversation with the two other members of your party, as far as you were concerned as co-leader of your party, had any verification taken place during that period of time?
During that day, I recall that there was also I got some information from colleagues that there was bomb threats, so the process had stopped. And given the amount of verification we still had outstanding, there was no way that afternoon that the entire list could have been completed.
So when you got to Ashman's at about 3:30 and you had this conversation with your party colleagues, were there other people there?
Yes, there were party agents as well as observers there.
And at this point in time, did you observe whether there were any police officers there?
Yes, there were more police officers there on that day than the previous days.
Well, having heard this talk about a declaration and so on, what was your party's position?
We were astonished, and we decided to prepare a recount letter to be submitted to the chief elections officer.
And did you submit such a letter?
We had that letter prepared at about 6 p.m. that afternoon, but however we did not see Mr. Lowenfield at any point, so we did not get to submit that letter to him.
And did you get any information about court proceedings?
Yes, I got information that an injunction had been filed and was approved.
Now, while you were there on that day at Ashman's building, had you seen the commission chairperson?
That afternoon, I did not see her.
And were there inquiries as to where she was?
Yes, I did inquire if she was in the building. My
Who
colleagues.
did you ask?
I asked my colleagues, and they had told me that no, she wasn't. However, when I had ventured further into the building, I would have asked one of the Liberties and Justice Party representative, Mr. Devon, and he had told me that the chairwoman was in the building.
Are you familiar with a Detective Narain?
Yes.
And that evening, did you see him?
Yes, I saw him later that evening.
Where?
At the Ashman building.
Was he in uniform?
No, he was in casual clothes.
And can you tell us, did you speak to him?
Before, at no point I spoke to him before, until later that evening I spoke with him.
All right. And what was he doing, or where was he going, as far as you could tell?
Well, when I was on the second floor when I first saw him, he seemed to be in a rush, and he was rushing up the stairs to the second floor. And he ventured to the side. He didn't speak with anyone, and he ventured to the side where the stairs to the third floor was, and he was pleading with the police officers to let him pass.
And where were the police officers on the third floor?
They were on the stairs to the third floor, at the bottom of that stairs, barricading it, so no one could enter the third floor.
And how did you know they were police officers?
They were in uniforms.
At this point in time, you were on the second floor, correct?
Yes.
Were you in a position to hear what was being said on the third floor?
No.
Did you see Detective Narain have access to the third floor, or get access to the third floor?
So he was pleading with the police officers to let him by, but they were being difficult about it, and just
when you
a
say
few.
they were being difficult, is it that they were telling him something?
Well, they were verbally exchanging as well, saying, "No, you cannot enter the third floor. It's prohibited at this point." And
did he say why he wanted to go to the third floor?
yes, he continuously told them that the chairwoman had called him, and he said his relative, actually, the chairwoman was his relative, and that she was calling him, saying that she was not feeling well.
And when he said that to the police officers, what was their reply, if any?
They didn't seem to care about that.
So how did that situation resolve itself?
Well, just a few minutes, probably about 5 to 8 minutes after detective had ventured upstairs, the ambulance came and the paramedics came out, and they also came up in a rush to the second floor. They pleaded with the police officer to assist them in getting upstairs, and they complied. And then Detective Narain got to go up, and then we all got to go up.
So all of you went up at the same time?
No, the paramedics went up at first. Detective Narain followed them, and then eventually, just about a matter of 30 seconds, we basically broke that barricade and went up.
You all broke the barricade?
Yeah, well, we forced ourselves through that barricade.
Okay. Now, did you see where in particular on the third floor the paramedics and Detective Narain had gone?
Well, they were looking at throughout all of the rooms, and there was one room open, and they ventured into that room, and they were trying to ask the man that was in that room where the chairwoman was, and ventured outside back. When they were outside, I was outside with them, and we noticed that a door, which I was bracing, and that door had all of its locks missing, and it was secured.
I don't follow you.
I don't
Sorry.
Yes. No, go ahead. It's the same concern I had. If the locks are missing,
Yes.
how was the door secured?
Right. So that was where it became interesting and very suspicious. So the door was shut, no way of accessing it, and all of the locks on the outside were broken off.
What do you mean? The lock or the handle?
The handles rather. So the lock was intact, but the handles were all broken off. Forgive me. Sorry.
Yes. And did you push against that door?
Yes, I started to push against that door and kick that door.
Could you tell me why?
Given all that was going on, and given the state of the Detective Narain, he seemed very frustrated, and given that an injunction was to be filed, and also given that it's the chairwoman of the Guyana Elections Commission, I was thinking in my head, if something is wrong with her and something should go wrong with her, how long or how derailed this process would get. So given my medical empathy as well, I decided to have a go at that door, given that thinking and hoping that the chairwoman was in that room.
And were you assisted by anyone?
Yes, there was another gentleman to my right, but I can't recall exactly who it was.
And did you get through that door?
Yes, I got through that door.
Tell us what happened when you got through that door.
So the last kick, door broke loose. I got into that room. I saw there was a room within a room, so that the outside of that room had just desks and chairs. I looked straight ahead to north, and I saw the other room, which had a door that was slightly opened. I went to that room and I pushed that door open. When I pushed that room door open, I saw Madam Chair seated on a couch with Miss Roxanne Myers on that couch handle to the right of her, and the room had about 12 men inside.
Okay. Now, when you say Miss Roxanne Myers, do you know what position she held?
Yes, she was the Deputy Chief Elections Officer at that point.
Of GCOM?
Of GCOM.
And there were 12 men in that room.
Yes.
Chair was sitting on the couch.
Yes.
And how did she appear to you?
For me, she appeared very flustered. She looked very pale. She didn't seem well.
Did you have an opportunity to speak to her?
Well, when I got in, I did not personally address her, but the colleague behind me, he was videoing at that point, and he was continuously asking Miss Chairwoman, how is she doing, if she's okay.
Please, you're kind of eating up your words. We'd like to hear that clearly.
So, when I had gotten into that room, I did not speak with her directly, but the colleague who had entered behind me, he was videoing at that point, and he had asked Miss Chair if she was doing okay and how is she doing in general.
Was this colleague the AmCham observer, Anton Orion? Can you recall?
Yes.
And no, the colleague you entered the room with the chairperson with was a male colleague?
Yes, was a male. He was an AmCham observer. AmCham being the American Chamber of Commerce. Yes.
And this AmCham observer asked the chairwoman how she was doing and so on.
Yes.
And did she reply?
I didn't recall her replying at any point.
And did Miss Roxanne Myers say anything to you all?
She did not say anything, but I recall her putting her hand up, and as soon as she had put her hand up, I felt myself being pulled out of that room.
By whom?
We were pulled out of that room by officers, police officers.
And when you say we were pulled out of that room, of whom do you speak?
It was myself and Mr. Narain.
Are you familiar with the name Gypsy Prasad?
Yes.
Who is that person?
She is another observer who was in the room with us.
Okay, can you recall what observer group she was from?
She is also from the American Chamber of Commerce.
Did the police, well, you say the police pulled you and Mr. Narayan out of that room,
Yes.
and what became of you all?
We were placed in the outer room, in that room. We were placed in the outer room for about an hour. We were asked to put our hands above our head, basically to surrender. And we were searched and we were questioned.
Was it just the two of you?
No, at that point it was all three of us.
When you say all three, who's the third?
The third was Miss Gypsy Prasad. So myself and Antar Narayan entered the room with the chairwoman. However, Miss Gypsy Prasad was still outside in that other room.
Yes.
Right. So we pulled out, and when we were pulled out, we saw her outside there as well.
Okay, and the three of you were made to put your hands up and stand in that room?
Yes.
About how many police officers were in that room?
There were 3 police officers.
And you said they questioned you?
Yes, they were asking us, what are you doing in here? Why did you break the property of the government? And along those lines.
And did they tell you anything about, or did they mention APNU and AFC?
Yeah, well, I recalled one of them saying that the APNU AFC has won the election, so why are we fighting?
Now, how long did the three of you remain in that room?
We were in there for about an hour.
And during that period of time, were you able to see what, if anything, was happening outside?
No, the door was shut tight, and I could have heard all of the noises die down.
Were you eventually escorted out of that room?
Yes, we were escorted out of that room.
And where were you taken?
So we were escorted out of that room and taken onto the balcony of that floor. Sorry, the second floor. And we were lined up there for about 15 minutes until they got us again. And we were escorted down by about a large group of officers down to the ground floor. And myself and the AmCham observer was placed in a police vehicle and taken to the Bergdam police station.
Were you charged?
Yes.
And were you bailed or kept there at the station?
So we were there for about until about 2 p.m. that morning, where we received bail.
And up to this date, have you received any notification to go to court on those charges?
No.
Now, after you were bailed, did you at any point return to Ashman's building?
Yes, so I had specifically asked my colleagues who picked me up to take me back to the Ashman's building that night.
And were you able to enter Ashman's building?
No, the entire building was sealed shut, and we weren't even allowed to get within about 30 to 50 feet within the building.
Why?
It was barricaded and secured by police officers.
Now, I want to ask you this. While you were in that room after the police pulled you out, did you see the chairperson?
No.
Did you see Miss Myers?
No.
What about Detective Narayan? Did you see him?
Detective Narayan was also taken down to the police station with us.
He was also arrested?
He was not kept in the same room, but we eventually ended up at the station together.
I see. Okay. Now, I'm just going to summarize this a little bit. There was, after some time, there was a recount of votes.
Yes.
And you witnessed that?
Yes.
And was this at the Arthur Chung Convention Center?
Yes.
At Lilendal?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioners, I have some audio-visual material which I would like to to use before this witness ends his testimony, but I would like to have the opportunity to make sure that I don't waste your time by trying to use equipment which is not functioning properly. So I'm wondering whether we can take the break for today at this point and have Dr. Kanhai return in the morning.
The video information that you have, is there a difficulty with putting it on CD? Having the doctor verify that that's a true recording that was made by him or
But Commissioner, let me answer the question this way. I have to rely on the IT specialists who have been assigned to the inquiry. So I am sure that if that is possible, that I will make the request of them and provide you either with a flash drive or with a CD, so that those could be given to you and one perhaps could be put in as an exhibit. But whether that is possible at this point, I need to be able to confirm.
So what you're asking
Asking us to continue, to permit me to continue with this witness tomorrow morning, if
It
needed.
will be ready by tomorrow. You can perhaps ask the doctor to come back when you're ready. I don't think it's so advisable to bring him and you're not ready.
Yeah, I think
Indeed, and I'm guided.
contacting if you need.
Certainly, absolutely. Well, in those circumstances, Dr. Kanhai,
You're relieved until.
Well,
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Kanai, this was your first effort at national elections, national and regional elections,
Yes, sir.
because your party was new.
Yes, sir.
But were you involved in the verification process for regions other than Region 4?
No, we were not possible to get any candidates in the outlying regions.
You didn't field candidates in
Yes, the outlying.
6 or 2 or 3?
In 4 of those regions.
Sorry?
In 4 of those regions, we did not contest. But for the verification process in Regions 3, which was one of the closest, we had candidates at the polling station only, and they had gotten their SOPs, and from that, they were given to us.
Well, let me ask you this then. The events that you have recounted for us, those events relate to the verification process for Region 4.
Yes.
And so you couldn't tell us anything about the verification process for other regions.
I can tell you that Regions 3 verification process, we had no issues reported back to us. We had candidates in Region 8. They said that went smoothly, the voting and everything went smoothly for that region as well. And that's as far as I recall.
So, in relation to the verification process for Region 4, 9 regions had been completed without issue. Is that what you're saying?
Basically.
That's correct?
Yes.
And for the verification process for Region 4, based on what we've heard so far, it seems as though this was a very, for varying reasons, including people being tired and flash drives going into rooms and police intervening, this process was extremely protracted.
It was extremely protracted, sir.
From your experience, it was spread over a number of days.
Yes. And that can be given to the fact that Region 4 is the largest populated region. So usually that would take about max, I believe, from previous elections that went on for about 2 to 3 days. But this one had gone on for way too long.
Thank you.
Let me
Thank you, sir.